Well, welcome back to exercise 9, and this is where we're going to be taking a bit more of a further look into the stabilize function here. I'm going to open up the last project that I was working on, so that's the so I'm going to open up the last project that I was working on, and that's the surfboards that we were doing in exercise 8. Okay, and I'm going to save a copy of this as. And this is going to be further stabilized, so let's call this V002. So just let's have a quick look at our layers again. We've got our blonde arm, which was the track mat, and then we've got our surfboard here. Now I'm not going to use the blonde arm at all anymore. So just to make sure that we don't ever use this again, what I'm going to do is turn the selection over to the Uber key. Right click on it and deactivate the layer, and that means that that layer is going to be deactivated throughout the entire range of the shot, not just at the parts where we weren't using it. There we go. I can turn back onto auto keyframe again. So if I'd have just sat with the auto keyframe and just deactivated the layer there, it would actually have just set a keyframe for us, so it would still have activated when we got to the layer in point. Alright, so let's take a look back in the stabilize function here, and let's go back to our surfboard track and hit play, and we'll see a look at what we were doing with the stabilize before. Okay, so I was quite happy with where that was going. We've kept in some of the sort of regular camera movement, but we have made everything a little, well, actually a lot more stable. Cool. Now the problem we've got is, of course, where it's having to stabilize things up, we've got these huge black borders going across here. So it's because of that we're going to look at the third window here. So this is our borders, our autofill, and our region. Okay, so let's look first at borders, and this is one way of getting rid of the black edges around. So we have our center. So with this turned on, this will actually redefine the center of the frame to try to get rid of as many of the black pixels as possible. Now this works really well when you combine it with zoom as well. So if we just had zoom turned on, that's going to make quite a huge difference here. And it will just zoom up the image just to fill in the edge of the black borders. And if we have center turned on as well, then depending on our footage, that gives us the sort of best of both worlds. Because we don't really want to be zooming up too high, because every time we zoom, we're going to lose image quality, and the image is going to get a bit softer. Cool. And what we can also do is apply crop. So if in our clip thing here, we had a crop or a mask put on here, this would also apply that same crop to our rendered frames. But we don't need to apply a mask, so let's just come back and reset all of these to 0 again. And back into stabilize. And center as well. Cool, so how do we get this data out now? If we just exported the stabilized tracking data and bring that into our compositing app, none of the stuff that we have on the borders here is going to make a difference. So let's come in, let's do a After Effects corner pin and copy that to clipboard. And then once that's finished going, we'll come into After Effects and we will paste that data in. And let's just play that back. And you can see it's done nothing to help our black border problems. So to use this data, we render directly within Mocha Pro. And where do we render to? Well, this is where our output is going to go to. We'll hit render on the current frame, and this will now give us a output clip, which is stabilize, walking with surfboard. Where's that being saved to? Well, it's being saved to our, have a look, default output directory. It's being saved here into our results. So let's take a little look at that. Just go directly into the Finder. Have a look at my results. And there it is, saved as a TIFF file as I set up in my preferences in exercise 1. So if we're happy with what that's doing, we can just render the whole thing either backwards or forwards. And we could just let that go for a short while it does its job. And let's take a look at this. One stabilized image sequence. Cool. All right, so that's using one method of doing it. That's using the borders method to scale and center things up to minimize the borders we've got there. Another way of doing it, let's just turn these off. And obviously my frame's not rendered, so let's come back to check out the walking with surfboard clip. So our original clip rather than the rendered one. There we go. That's using the borders to zoom things up. The other way of doing it is using autofill. Now autofill works in a very different way, and the way that this works actually has much more to do with the remove module that we'll be seeing shortly. Because what we need to do here is we need to define another shape, another plane that's going to track our background image here. So I'm going to create a new X-spline, and I'm going to track my sky here, taking a bit of the water as well. Translation, scale, rotation, shear, that should be fine. I probably don't even need shear, but I'll keep that on just for now. And let's just set our project out point there. I'm just going to track backwards. I'll stop that a second. Still got the surfboard track turned on, that's why it was going a bit slow. And turn that off, we don't need that. Cool, so that looks like it's got our sky done quite nicely. So let's come back into our, actually let's call this Sky Track 1. Turn off the rendering on that just for a moment, bring that to the bottom here. Okay, so let's come back in and let's find a frame where the sky is out. There we go. So to use autofill, we really need to define the background elements that we want to be filling in. And the shapes that we have here have to extend into the black regions here. So that's why this shape here, I made this slightly bigger so that it would extend out into the black areas here. Okay, so I'm going to go and turn autofill on. The search range is 10, which means what it's going to do is it's going to hunt 10 frames forward and 10 frames backwards to try and find pixels to fill in this blank area here. Now, this is quite a large amount, especially for this particular shot where things are moving fairly quickly, so I can take that down a little bit and it's going to process out a bit quicker. Okay, so when I'm happy with that, I am going to just hit render on that there. It's going to fill in that frame, and it's going to fill in those borders there within my shape here. Let's just zoom up a little bit on that and fill that in with information from previous frames and future frames. Now we've got a little bit of a line going down here. So what we can also do is we can hit dissolve. Let's re-render that. And that's taken away that line there, and that looks really nice. Now there was a reason that I created this shape this size, and that was basically to show you the difference that that's making there. So it's only going to be within that area. So if I just come back now to my walking with surfboard up here and extend this shape out over here and over here. Go back to my surfboard track there and render that out now. You can see that that is now going to be filling in, just turn that off, filling in all the way up to that shape as well. Cool. So we can, if we've got a decent track on our background here, we can then just sort of track that in and then either extend the shape up or create another shape that links over to our track. Now, what the model illumination does is it compensates for any change in lighting that we have between the frames that we're searching for here. So again, if you're seeing some artifacts, turning on model illumination can help to sort of even out those brightness changes. Okay, let's look now at fill from background here. So fill from background is useful when we can't have or don't have the time to sort of fill in using the planar technique. What it's going to do here is it's going to look through and layer the background images underneath and help to fill stuff in. So it's really useful for a quick fix. But if you can have a look here, the quality that we're getting is, far from the quality that we had on the previous way where we weren't filling from the background, where we're actually drawing the shapes. And here where things are changing so rapidly, it's just sort of disappearing around the sides there. But some of the times, if you depending on your footage, if you've just got some fairly kind of plain patterns going on here or sort of basic weird shapes, actually the clouds are working fairly okay here, even though there's some artifacts going on here. So if it's just for narrative or just to fill in something so that there's something that doesn't draw the eye to the area, this can be quite a useful and faster way of working, rather than going in and let's turn that off, rather than going in and actually filling in the various shapes there, which would give a better result, but at the expense of taking a lot more time to do it. So you can see here, let's zoom in on this, the quality of that is a million miles better than the quality we had just from the fill from background. But fill from background, fill us in with the background patterns there, so that so long as your story is going on properly and is interesting enough, hopefully you'll be focused on this area here and not the edges here. But that's just another way of working it there. Right, so let's now take a look at the final little tab here, which is region. And to do that, I'm going to just turn off all of these, and I'm going to create another track. So come over here, use my X-spline. I'm just going to real quick track on the head here. Really doesn't matter that it's so loose that it is hardly worth being there. Let's just have a little look. And let's maximize smoothing on that so you can see. There we go. Okay, so really quite extreme changes. Obviously wasn't helped by the fact that I really didn't care to get everything 100%. Cool, alright, but that doesn't matter because over in the region here, just want to show you what the stabilize matte area does and the apply matte in composite. So stabilize matte area only affects the will only actually stabilize the area within our shape here. So it basically restricts the input to our shape here. If I hit render on that, we've now rendered up a lovely repeat of our shape there. One thing to notice here as well is that it hasn't created a new clip for me, is it's still working with the regular base clip here. Alright, so the other thing to look at is the apply matte in composite. And this does the opposite. It does a stabilization, but restricts it to the shape of the output of the original shape here. So you can see that we've still got our shape going on here, and we've got the stabilized bit here now being in the original. Let's have a look at there. Let's see if I can come into the track and show that. The original shape. There we go. So our stabilized image being imported or outputted into the original shape layer there. Those both together. So we've got this interesting thing where the input shape is being restricted to our stabilized shape position, inputted and restricted again by our regular shape layer here. Alright, so that was region there, but to my mind the ones that are most useful are going to be the borders and the autofill. Autofill especially, it has the advantage over the other way of doing it, which is using the borders. Whether you use borders within Mocha Pro itself or within your compositing app, you're pretty much the only option you have to get rid of the borders is to do either some sort of cropping or some sort of upscaling. If you do upscaling, then obviously your picture quality is going to be degraded somewhat, and you're going to end up with a slightly softer picture. Yeah, so the advantage over using autofill is obviously that you're rebuilding the transparent areas with non-scaled versions of previous frames, so you're not losing that quality by upscaling or zooming into your picture or having to crop it to to get rid of these black borders here. Cool. All right, that's it for the stabilize for now. When we come back, we're going to be looking at the remove module and seeing how we can use some of the techniques we've actually been working with in the stabilize to remove objects that we don't want anymore. All right, I will see you in exercise 10.